Whether you've recently dealt with a shoulder injury or just woke up with pain in between your shoulder blades, this sensation often lingers and is honestly super annoying. I have dealt with this pain myself, and I found that to not only look at the shoulder, but also the muscles and joints around it to be quite helpful. So in this video, we're going to go over a series of exercises that will not only apply length to the tissues in between our shoulder blades, but will also help to improve functional strength and mobility to the shoulders. So ideally, we can operate pain-free for the weeks and years to come. For our first technique, we are going to go through an active rhomboid release. So grab yourself a tennis ball, a softball, a lacrosse ball, something that is a ball and has some density to it. And we're going to place this directly on our rhomboid. So once we have located the rhomboid muscle, all we are going to do is simply come onto our back. And all I want you to begin to do is just roll up and down along the tissue until you find a point of density. And once you have found that, we are going to start to work through our active release portion. So whatever rhomboid I am releasing, that is going to be the arm that we're going to start to take through a range of motion. So what we're going to do is start at our hip, and we're going to come up to about shoulder height. And as we do that, we're just going to begin to rotate the arm in and out. So as you can see here, I'm just going through a little bit of internal rotation, a little bit of external rotation as I go from my hip until about my shoulder joint. You can work through that for about 30 seconds to a minute. And then what I'm going to get you to start to do is press overhead. So your range of motion here may not be very significant, and that's totally okay. And all we're gonna do is work through that same motion with the arm. So I'm gonna rotate my arm in, I'm gonna rotate it back out. And as you can see here, I'm just kind of resetting almost back to like a bicep curl with like my elbow to my ribs. And then I'm just pressing up and rotating my hand as I go through that motion. Each spot or nodule kind of that you find of tension, I'd spend anywhere between about 90 seconds to 2 minutes on. So you might spend about 5 to 7 minutes on either shoulder here, depending on the level of tightness that you might be dealing with. For our next technique, we're going to be working through kneeling shoulder blade breathing. So as the title suggests, we're going to be in a kneeling position, and we are going to take our hand to the opposite elbow. And once I'm kind of in this rested position, what we're going to think about doing is moving our shoulder blades away from the spine, or going into a very slight protraction. And even the act of doing this, you may find actually creates a little bit of length kind of through that mid-back. But what we can do to build on that is actually start to breathe into that area of our spine. So what I like to envision here is my breath is starting quite low, and then I'm more or less just walking up my spine with the breath. And as I approach my shoulder blades, I'm going to really emphasize the pressure kind of going into there. And while I'm doing this, I am kind of pulling on my elbows a little bit, as that's just going to help to facilitate my shoulders getting pulled apart a little bit more. And you're going to notice things like the rhomboids, even the lats, actually get a stretch in here. I would spend about 30 seconds to a minute just kind of working on the breathing mechanism. And then what we can start to do here is a little bit of rotation. So ideally, my shoulders are actually going to stay totally locked in place, but I am going to do a little bit of rotation as well as a little bit of a tilt from one side to the other. I would work through about 8 to 12 repetitions here on either side in terms of the rotation, and just see if you can try to maintain the space as well as the pressure as you're going through this. For our third exercise, we're gonna work through a Serratus Plank. So this is quite similar to our previous exercise in terms of what we are gonna want to establish with our shoulders. So I'm gonna get down into a plank position, and I'm going to round my shoulders forward. And the intent here is we're gonna get some serratus engagement. If you've ever seen a boxer, they have very well developed serratuses, I guess. And what that helps to contribute to is shoulder stability. So we're just gonna try to mimic some of that tension into the serratus in hopes that we can improve shoulder stability. So now that I'm in the plank position, I got my shoulders slightly rounded. What we're gonna start to do is take our hips up by pushing our elbows away. So what I'm trying to imagine here is by my elbows driving forward and keeping my shoulders in this slightly rounded position, that is going to be what is actually taking my hips up towards the sky. Once my hips get to the top position, All I'm gonna do is try to maintain some of that shoulder positioning and that shoulder tension as the hips just reset back down here. Ideally, at no point do we let that tension kind of just go or let the shoulder blades excessively retract, as that is going to take away from the serratus engagement that we're trying to get. Aim for anywhere between about 10 to 12 repetitions here, or you can go for time, which I would suggest anywhere between 45 seconds to a minute. Just try to keep the reps consistent and the quality high. For our last exercise, we're gonna be working through rhythmic hooks. So what we're gonna do is build on everything that we have covered up until this point. So we're gonna think about our breathing. We're gonna think about establishing a little bit of serratus tension. And then all I'm gonna start to work through here is a hook from one side to the other. What I like to incorporate in with this is a little bit of a pivot for my feet, kind of going from one foot to the other. And the idea here is my elbow is going to stay quite high, but it's staying suspended more or less off my lat and serratus tension, not so much from my delt. So you can think if I just lift my elbow up, we'll say like this, that's gonna be a lot of tension through my delt. But if I kind of put a little bit of tension first into my serratus and I kind of bring the whole shoulder girdle up, now I can kind of suspend my shoulder off of that. And ideally my arm is gonna be almost somewhat relaxed here, because that's gonna allow me to work through this hooking motion in a little bit more of a rhythmic fashion. If you wanna build on this exercise, what you can do is instead of keeping both arms kind of in that hook position, what you can think about is taking the other arm into a bicep curl. And now what we're starting to do is create a little bit of reciprocity between the arms. So as one arm is going into the internal rotation, my opposing arm is going into the external rotation. And I find by doing this, it just allows the muscles around my shoulders to stay a little bit more linked to the exercise. And I tend to be able to go through it a little bit more dynamically and a little bit more quickly. I would work through about 10 to 12 repetitions here on either side. It's not something you have to go crazy with. And what's nice is that you're incorporating some thoracic rotation. So this is actually a great tool to warm up your body for just about any activity you might have ahead. We covered a lot in this video, and if you found that one thing was more helpful than the other, then I'd encourage you to just stick with that. But try not to only stick with that. Make sure that you explore kind of out of your comfort zone as well. But in the meantime, if you find something is working, just continue to use that. Whether that be the release technique, the breathing, the corrective exercise, or the rhythmic work, sometimes you just have to meet your body with where it's at. If you enjoyed this video and found some value in it, something that would help me out a lot is if you did throw this video a like, as well as if you're new around here, you can certainly subscribe to the channel for more future content like this in the future. And until next time, make sure you are prioritizing and then you are optimizing for you. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out until then. Peace out until then. We'll see you.